All right, good afternoon, and thank you for joining us for another episode of the Green Circle podcast, coming to you from the Knoll Furniture Showroom here in Liberty Village. Once again, Greenford built this space about a decade ago to LEED Platinum standards, and we're very happy that Knoll welcomes us time and again to host this podcast. For those who have tuned into past episodes, you know me, but for those tuning in for the first time, my name is Scott Ledden, and I am your host. And today I'm very pleased to be joined by Joe Almeida, Principal and Managing Director for Avison Young here in Toronto. Welcome to the show, Joe, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
That's my pleasure. I appreciate it. It's not that easy to find, and it's hot outside, so sorry for making you walk around a little bit outside.
No complaints.
So to get started, Joe, I just want to give our listeners a little bit of background on yourself and understand Avison Young and your positioning in the marketplace, the size, number of offices, et cetera, exactly what you guys do. And then I guess we'll kind of just see where the discussion takes us. I know you were a broker, or you have been a broker at Avison Young for 28 years, and recently you moved on to the management side of that.
That's
and
right.
I'm sure that posed some unique challenges. And
a little bit different, yeah.
Yeah, you've enjoyed that so far?
I have, yeah. It's been. I actually worked as a manager and still producer for a period of time, so I got a bit of a chance to work my way into it. Yeah, transition, and so it's been fine. Yeah.
Okay, so before we get into some of the specific challenges you faced, why don't you tell our listeners a little bit about Avison Young and the number of offices, the services you provide, and go from there.
Sure. So Avison Young is a Canadian-owned company, which we're very proud of. We've got about 5,000 real estate professionals around the world, 20 countries we operate in, and I think we're at about 103 offices right now.
Is that right?
Yeah.
And is that fairly recent growth of that size, or?
A good chunk of that was in the last 18 months, where we acquired a company in the UK, a 200-year-old company called GVA.
Okay.
And that was close to doubling our size.
Okay, so a big jump for.
A big jump, nice. and it was interesting in that, in the UK, the brokerage business is a little bit different, not as transactional as we are here. It's more consulting, long-term contracts. So it brought a whole different aspect to our business.
Nice.
So we're changing the way we think about the business here in North America as well as a result.
So talk a little bit about your services you offer. I know you have project management services and obviously leasing type services. What other business lines do you folks focus on here in Canada? So
on the brokerage side, we do leasing and capital markets. We do multifamily as well, which has been great during the pandemic. They've actually been quite busy. That sector has continued on very well. We've done a number of transactions in the last little while, surprisingly, which is good. We have, as you mentioned, project management across Canada in the major cities. We also have property management across Canada. We manage about 300 million square feet globally, probably about 3 million here in the GTA, mostly office, and then some industrial and a little bit of shopping center business as well. And we have a valuation team as well here in the GTA and one in Calgary. And then the one that we're starting up now, you would have seen a couple months ago, we hired Sheila Botting from Deloitte, and she's starting up our professional services practice. Okay. She's going to be the president of the Americas for our professional services practice. And we acquired a company down in Atlanta that's in that business as well, and so that group is off and running and should be very busy as we come out of this with a lot of the workplace strategy reviews that are being done right now by major users
how to
North America.
Restructure the office and how real estate in general, what's the use is going to look like. So
Exactly. What's your space going to look like coming out of this? This is going to have a lot of impact on the way users use office space. So we're very happy with that move, and it's going to keep a lot of our teams very busy.
Absolutely. So fair to say you're full service, obviously. And one of the challenges that I've heard, being on the construction side and interacting with you folks and the project managers is getting that, one business line helping the other. Obviously, the brokers are typically, well, not obviously, but I think the brokers are first in on many cases. And then, of course, there's the project management side, which is somebody we get involved with. How do you, I've heard there's a challenge of kind of, getting those two groups to work together and bringing each other to the table. What are some of the things you've seen, I guess, moving from broker to now management, to try to get those groups to work together effectively to try to increase the revenue and the service offering to your client?
Well, one of the things that makes us a little bit different is that we're a principal-led company.
Okay.
And so most of the senior people within our company are actually owners in the company.
Ah.
And as you can imagine, that it's a bit of a different headspace in terms of how you look at the client's needs as opposed to my own particular needs as a broker or as a project manager. So there's a lot more collaboration amongst our service lines as a result. And we find that certainly very helpful, and I think our clients do as well.
Well, that sort of probably answers one of my next questions, which was you've been at Avison Young for 28 years, as far as I know.
Yeah.
I've been in the business for 16 years, but through that 16 years, I've seen people move from one to the next, to the next, to the next. You've been there for 28 years, and I was going to say, what's kept you at Avison Young? I assume that's one.
That's the main reason.
Attribute.
Yeah, that's the main reason. I mean, when you are anchored in like that, and everybody else is looking at. Going in the same direction, it provides a great atmosphere. The collaboration that takes place, not just within the service lines, but within our different offices, it's really allowed us to grow quickly. That's really what helped us grow in the United States, was bringing in, key senior brokers around the U.S. that liked that mindset and wanted to own a piece of the rock and be part of the decision-making process and take advantage of the culture that brings together.
That fosters. Yeah, I mean, I've heard that brokerage is very competitive. Not only to compete against other brokerage houses, you compete with other folks in your office, and it's it's an aggressive business, and it sounds like the principal type approach brings a little bit more collaboration and a little bit more. What's good for the business is going to benefit you in the end anyway. So it sort of encourages collaboration. It sounds like.
Absolutely does, and the client can see. They can see when that's not there, and that somebody is not necessarily looking after their own best, the client's best interest, and it becomes evident, and we really want to avoid that. We try to make sure that we bring people into our organization that understand that, and if they don't, then they usually don't last very long. It's not really the right fit for them.
Fair enough. In our early discussions, when you and I were talking on the phone, you mentioned that your various offices across Canada are opening at various stages, which is really encouraging because I've been walking around downtown Toronto and there's not a lot of activity, and it's, everyone's anxious to see people. I'm so happy to hear folks are getting back to the office. How did you manage that process? Who was involved, and what steps were taken, and how's it going?
Yeah, so it's been quite a process. We have a global team that's been looking at that since March 13th, basically, since we went off, and we put together a 60-day return to office policy. Okay. And we've actually shared that pretty extensively with our clients, who have we've heard some great reviews and got a lot of good feedback on it. We've also done that in consultation with the Cleveland Clinic in the United States. And they've actually just reviewed, now that we've been back in the office, we had them do a review, and so we've made a couple of amendments along the way. It is a bit of a living, breathing document, but it's for the first 60 days. I think our first offices opened in Houston and maybe, I'm going to say, Chicago. The U.S. is a little bit different. They've got a different mindset down there on how to deal with this, and our CEO, he's 100% behind the idea that it's got to be about the people first within the organization and the safety of the people. And so that works out very well. It leaves a little bit of room for interpretation south of the border, but here in Canada, it's served us very, very well. I think our first office to open was Edmonton, and we were moving into new space, so it was an interesting situation to move into new space as well as come out of this COVID hibernation, if you could call it that. But Edmonton is a bit of a different situation than Toronto in that a lot of the people there don't take public transit to the office, so that's never really an issue.
That's not a threat there.
It's not a threat.
Let me ask you a quick question about your
Sure.
office there, though. It was obviously designed pre-COVID, I assume.
Yes. Yeah.
Have you had to make a lot of, or has there been a lot of talk about modifying the layout, the structure, the flow of that?
There were a few things that were done. We moved in, I think it was right at the end of June. So we still had, half of March, April and May to take some of this into account. And so a lot of that was taken into account in terms of physical spacing. We also went with a much less dense environment. One of the things
that was before COVID.
That was before COVID. Yeah, we've been doing that, and we've done a bunch of research with our own offices here in the GTA, measuring usage. And before Christmas last year, we actually did a whole bunch of tests throughout our offices here, and it was no surprise that we came to the conclusion that most of our brokers are not in the office. I think the number was probably around 40% of the time.
Okay.
We had an actual bum in the seat, so to speak. And so we started to think that, with our lease here in downtown Toronto coming up, that, we need to take this into account in terms of how we're going to configure our space and make the most out of it. And what we started to think was that, if we take some of that space that we can save by not having, by moving to an agile seating plan, gives us a lot more opportunity to have, collaboration space, cafes, lounges, meeting areas, various sizes and whatnot. And so, we've been thinking about that for a while. But I guess back to your question about the space, we are in our space here. We opened on July 6th.
Okay.
And I think everything's gone well now. I mean, it's a different world. The good thing is that most of our staff, if not everybody, has been 100% behind the new protocols that are in place that we have to live with during this first 60 days, and things have gone great. Knock on wood.
That's great. So, I mean, as you mentioned, there's a bit of a different approach between the United States and Canadians. We seem to be very, accepting and compliant of whatever protocols are in place. We just want to, we do what we're told, and we, hope for the best. And so far, it's paying off here. So I assume your employees at this point are really happy with being back to work.
Yeah, well, I wouldn't say there's not a great amount of them that are back to work. We're probably at about 20%, which from what I'm hearing from our offices across Canada is about the same, maybe a little bit more out in the Western offices because of the differences I mentioned with the less use of public transit. But part of our return to office protocol is that anyone who can do their job from home is permitted to do that until the end of 2020.
Okay.
So we're not obligating people to come to the office, and it's pretty obvious the brokerage side of the business wants to get back into the office, and have been doing so at a higher rate than any other part of our business.
How would you handle it if more than 20% wanted to come into the office? You just do a rotating schedule and accommodate as much as you can?
Yeah, we would move to that, but we did a lot of surveying of our staff beforehand, and so we had a pretty good idea of what the numbers would be, and so it hasn't been necessary. But what we have done quite a lot to the space in terms of taking a number of seats out of. We had our workplace strategy team come in and take a look at our space. Reorient some of our seating to make sure that there's sufficient physical distancing for everybody. We've got a couple of online tools where people, before they come to the office, they'll fill out a health questionnaire and tell the system that they're not at any risk. Once you get to the office, there's a QR code that you scan to show that you've been in the office, so we can continue to document who's coming in and when, in case we need that information. Yeah. We also have a stand-up temperature check.
Oh, do you?
Yeah.
Okay. Good.
It's
amazing what we've had to do to adapt in a short period of time, and it's all of our guests have said the same thing. It's been a challenge. It's been not what anybody wanted, but there is some positive things that come out of it. And you've been challenged in ways you likely haven't been challenged before. We're learning new skills. We're sort of, I think, optimizing as much as you can, right? Mm-hmm. Because you're figuring out new ways to do things. It's different. There are some changes. We long for the old days, and we hope to get back to at least something like that. But it has, there has been some positive things in terms of efficiencies. And, one of the things we talked about, and I think you talked about it a little bit, is, the office, when we first rolled into the situation, people were saying, will you go back to the office or won't you go back to the office? And one or the other. But it's likely going to be a combination. And so if you can do that, you might actually be more efficient than you were doing it the old way, because you can actually, whatever activity is you're doing that's most efficient, you'll do it at that spot.
You might be more efficient, and you might have a happier, more efficient workforce, right? And that's what I think a lot of employers are really striving for. Mm-hmm. I think that I can certainly see with a lot of our larger clients where we are sort of embedded doing some workplace strategy reviews for them at this point. It's about getting flexibility for for their people, being able to continue to attract and retain the top quality talent. But also, let's not be foolish. There's also a cost side to every operation, and you've got to minimize costs. Somebody is there responsible for that, and so that's part of it. So the big question coming out of this is going to be, how's this going to impact the office market here in Toronto, and not only in Toronto, nationally and globally, but certainly in Toronto. I think we're in a very good situation with low vacancy rates and a very strong stable of ownership to be able to deal with this in the right way, and not not let the tail wag the dog, so to speak.
Right.
So I think we are going to see some changes from the user side. I think it's going to come back to what you just said, which is flexibility.
Yep.
There will be an effort to try and take advantage of bringing costs down if possible. But I think at the end of the day, it's going to be about the employee and putting them in a situation where they can be functional, efficient, and enjoy doing their job. And for some people, that's going to mean not coming to the office 9 to 5 every day. I think for a lot of people, it's going to mean that. I can tell you from our own point of view in our organization, things are going to change a little bit. It's not going to be 100% revolving around the same work day that it was before. There will be flexibility to work from home for different people within the organization,
and I think employers have embraced that, quite frankly. I mean, I think they were forced to, and probably 100%. Panicked a little bit at first to go, actually, it's not bad. And I think that it's difficult to quantify the cost. Yes, of course the office is a cost, but if you let's call it a decade ago, when technology first arrived, that you could in fact work from home, there was a big trend to send everybody home, and then the Yahoos of the world at that time brought them all back because they go, geez, we're not getting the same type of engagement, no community, no culture, no learning from the office.
Productivity's down.
Productivity's down. So yes, you saved on the office rent, but you've lost your productivity, turnover, et cetera, et cetera. So again, I don't think it's a one or the other. It's going to be a combination of, and I think everyone is going to be more open to optimize. What's the best way? And if it's you work at home tomorrow or the next day or whatever. I'm just interested to know quickly your thoughts with respect to space. Then you said you've undensified, recognizing some people aren't going to be there, but then you've made more common areas. So common areas are a bit of a challenge.
We did that in Edmonton.
Yep.
We will likely be doing that here in Toronto as well.
Okay.
Well, most of our offices, as they come up, we have an office in Markham and Mississauga and downtown. So those we'll go through that process with all of them, with our workplace strategy team. So there will be some fairly significant changes in our space and our work strategy that comes out of that for sure.
Okay. And your clients, I assume, are talking the same types of things. They like what you're telling them, and you guys are on the same page, and we're all kind of feeling the same vibe out there.
Yeah, I think I think a lot of this, smart companies were already looking at this,
right?
And I think what happened is COVID has forced.
It's accelerated.
It's accelerated, right? And then when everyone was forced to go and work from home, and the world didn't explode or end, then a lot of these employers were like, wow, this is fantastic. We're not coming back to the office,
Yep.
and they're out in the media telling them. And, it was just a little too quick to come to that conclusion, and now that we've been doing it for a while and we're starting to see what really is coming out of it, we're starting to see that productivity is not as good as people had hoped for. There's no collaboration, and there's a feeling of isolation, and there's a feeling of, when does my work day end and my home life start? And that's gone. And there's going to be some very serious impacts down the road if that continues forever, because it's just not sustainable. So I think we got to get back. We got to avoid going to the extremes with this. Get back to what makes the most sense, and I think it's going to be based on flexibility. A good flexible platform that allows people to work to the best of their abilities, whether it's at home or in the office or a combination of both.
Well, yeah, and I think you highlighted the difference in Avison's culture, right, relative to your competitors, and that's part of what makes you folks different. It's difficult to build a culture if everyone's working from home.
Impossible.
It's impossible. And so that's what we talked about in one of our previous episodes. There's no culture, there's no community, there's no learning. Now, you're a 28-year veteran. Your learning is not the same as somebody who's starting off in the business. I don't know how you would hire somebody out of the Guelph real estate program, for example, and set them up at home and say, good luck. Your chance of being a productive broker that, in that way would be greatly reduced.
Yeah.
So you need that collaboration. And again, to me, it goes back to flexibility and optimization. How is the office now part of an optimal solution to maximize productivity and employee engagement and the employee experience and serve our customers the best, actually?
Yeah.
So,
I think you hit the nail on the head. That's definitely where we're going. It'd be great if we just continue to move forward and we don't get any big hiccups here in the GTA and across Canada.
Absolutely.
As we're seeing down in the States, because that'll make things a little bit easier, and we can continue to improve.
Yeah, absolutely. So, moving on to our last discussion point, as I mentioned earlier, you were a broker for 28 years. You had a small transition point of a year or two, I think, where you were a broker and manager.
A couple of years, yeah.
And now you're a full-time managing director, right?
Yes. Yeah.
What were some of the challenges you encountered making that switch? And how's it going?
It's going great. I mean, the other thing that was a bit of a challenge was I moved from
Mississauga
our
to downtown.
Mississauga office
Right.
and started managing our downtown operation. So I hadn't worked in downtown Toronto in probably 15 years since I moved out to the burbs.
Yeah.
So
So are you taking public transit, by the way, or no? Do you?
I have taken public transit once. I took the GO train in from Oakville one day just to see what it was like, but I was the only person
Perfect.
on the train, so it wasn't really a great tell of, or maybe that's what it is, but that's a big challenge for our city is to get that right.
Yes.
And that's one of the reasons why we're not forcing people to come back to the office. We want to give them the ability to feel comfortable with our public transit. And the other thing is, childcare is a real major issue for our organization, as it is for everybody else. And everybody's concerned about what's going to be happening in September with their kids, and not only that, but if you have younger kids with childcare. So we've got to get those kind of things right, so that people can feel comfortable in September, October, November to come back to the office, and we continue to improve and get back to normal, hopefully. Right. But to answer your question, it's been great. I've really enjoyed transitioning into management. It's been a little challenging, seeing as I started in August and then had to deal with this. But our global chief operating officer, same thing. He moved into that role, and then this came around, and all
so
of
you
a
have
sudden
each other to commiserate with.
We do. But you know what? It's been a challenge, but it's been a lot of fun, and I will be very much looking forward to a good, well-earned vacation at some point. I don't know when that's going to come, but I'm starting to feel like I really need one.
And no kidding. Well, it's been challenging times. I really appreciate you coming on and getting your insights here, and I just want to thank you so much for participating in our podcast and sharing your insights.
Pleasure. It's been a pleasure.
All right, thanks so much.